Good morning, world travelers. I'm sure when you booked this fantastic cruise, you had few things on your mind. First of all, we are going to Australia. I don't know if you've been before to Australia or not, before you came on this cruise, but you probably thought about a few things. And I bet it was, I've got to see kangaroos, koalas, and the Sydney Opera House. Because this is really, it's so iconic and it symbolizes Australia, and it is a masterpiece, architectural masterpiece of the 20th century. And we'll find out all the process and what happened and what is the building today, not just for Australia, for the world, not just for Sydney, because it's not just iconic for Sydney. So, Sydney Opera House, Australia's spectacular iconic treasure. And it is an absolute treasure. We recognize that it is treasure. And look at this. This is not imaginary picture. This is New Year's Eve in Sydney. So you come to Sydney New Year's Eve, the fireworks over the Harbour Bridge and just near the Sydney Opera House. It's absolutely spectacular. But you don't need the fireworks to enjoy the Opera House. You'll see it for yourself when you sail into Sydney Harbour and early in the morning, and it is just so glorious and so special, like floating on the water. My name is Nitza Lowenstein. I come from Sydney, Australia, so I'm going home. This is the center of the world for me, and I've passed the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge thousands, if not thousands of times in my lifetime. And I was very, very fortunate to be inside the Opera House for so often. I've seen many, many operas and concerts. I'm very fortunate about it. I'm a journalist, historian, public speaker, and also a married celebrant. And I'll show you where I officiated a wedding last year inside the Opera House. We all went out to take photos outside the Opera House. So I'm really proudly presenting the Sydney Opera House in Port Jackson, Sydney Harbour. It is considered the most distinctive and famous building in the world. I think even if the third countries and people that haven't traveled, they heard about the Sydney Opera House. And you can see here, every time I come and go, even from a cruise ship, I'm really excited about seeing it. Always take a photo when I arrive to Sydney or leave Sydney from the Sydney Opera House. So it's one of the most photographed building in the world. And I'm not exaggerating. You'll see how many photos you'll take when you're there. And it's known for this distinctive, the sail-like roof, and the prominent position, and I'll talk about this prominent position on Bennelong Point. So you can see the Opera House everywhere. From you go to Watson's Bay and everywhere around the harbour. Really, you can see the Sydney Opera House, and it's very close to the iconic bridge, so you can see them together. So it was officially opened by Queen Elizabeth II on October 20th, 1973. So it was talking about 52 years ago when it was officially opened. And it was added also to UNESCO World Heritage in 2007. And this is how the harbour looked, like all these boats, little boats going there to watch the fireworks. That's how you see it in New Year's Eve. So the construction of the Sydney Opera House took place from 1959 to 1973, and it was very complex, extremely challenging process. Took place 14 years, and we'll see why it was so challenging. But originally, when they were going to build it, ladies and gentlemen, the budget, it was going to cost $7 million, right? At the end, it cost $103 million. the New South Wales government cried on it, and I think now they are really ashamed of crying. And you'll see the whole process, what it happened. It gave work to 10,000 workers, so it was really a very important employer. And lots of new migrants from Europe that came, skilled migrants, also worked in the construction of the Sydney Opera House. They were from the former, it was then Yugoslavia, people came, and wherever they could come from Europe, then they worked. So it is a modern expressionist design with a series of precast concrete shells, the radius of 75.2 meter radius, forming this roof structure. And I promise you this building won't sink. It's really heavy because it's supported on 588 concrete piers that were sunk 25 meters below the sea level. And you'll find out about it. This is mind-boggling how it was done. So the highest point is 67 meters, which is, you can compare to maybe 22-story building, 22 high. And it actually has 2,000, almost 2,200 precast concrete sections, which weigh 50 tons each. Over 2,000 sections, each one 15 tons each, so you think. So although the roof, we refer to it as shells, they are precast concrete panels that are supported by precast concrete ribs, and they are not really shells in a structural sense, but this is the result, which is amazing. So look at the roof. Although it looks, from a distance, you think it's all white. It's not. They're actually featuring a really subtle chevron pattern. Chevron mean like V pattern. And they are composed of 1 million and about 57,000 tiles. But the tiles were really, really important there. The tiles are glossy white mixed with matte cream. And that there is a reason why he chose that. And they were manufactured by a Swedish company. And the architect went into a lot of trouble. That was his vision, to find the right manufacturer for the tiles. He actually went all around Japan looking for the manufacturer for the tile, and the Swedish company followed these instructions how to build those tiles. So the amazing interior surface, including off-form spray concrete. You see a lot of spray concrete, but also a lot of plywood, birch plywood, Australian wood, supplied from New South Wales, and also brush box, which is beautiful timber, the brush box. And the shell size were designed to match the needed internal height. That's why, because the concert hall, the opera, with low entrances leading up to the seating areas and tall stage towers. And the smaller venues, they got smaller venues as well, like the drama theater, the playhouse, the studio. They are located within the podium, which was really clever, how they designed the interior. So the podium is surrounded by substantial open place, public spaces. So if you don't get a tour into the opera house, you can go up around the podium, go up the steps, peep in, enjoy it. There is, I suggest, if you have time in the evening, there are lots of coffee shops, restaurants, right at the bottom here, overlooking the Harbour Bridge. And this is not for tourists. Most people you'll find there are locals. And the locals come there also to enjoy a glass of wine, beer, whatever, and some food. So the concert hall, magnificent concert hall, it's got 2,679 seats, and it's the home of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. It's designed for orchestral and also choral performances. And I absolutely love the concert hall. It doesn't matter where you sit, the acoustic is magical. Now, I'll never forget, I took my mother-in-law to a concert. She loves classic music, operas, to celebrate her 100th birthday. She passed away at 103 and a half in her home. She didn't refuse to go to an old age home because too many old people around me. So she lived in a house, but she was lucky because if you are healthy and you've got your faculties, I mean, only the last 3 years she had somebody staying with her 24 hours, but she lived around the corner from us every weekend. She was in my house. So I'll never forget, I mean, the lady was deaf when she was 100. But she loved the music. I mean, at Beethoven the Ninth, she knew it off by heart. And I don't know what she heard and what she didn't hear. But she was going like that. The excitement, never forget. And what else in the concert hall? Is a grand organ, the largest in the world, by the way, with 10,000 pipes. And it took 10 years to build this amazing organ there. And the opera theater, and I was very lucky, I've been there so often, it's got 1,507 seats. Let me tell you, every seat is taken, most of the operas, and it's the home of Opera Australia, and also the Australian Ballet performed there in the Opera House. So the opera theatre was renamed in 2012. They call it the John Sutherland Theatre, in memory of one of Australia's greatest opera singers, Dame John Sutherland. She is really regarded as the best soprano Australia ever had, and she passed away in 2010. And her last performance was in 1990, and I was very lucky. I saw her on stage. This is John Sutherland. Her husband was a very famous conductor as well. So I can't help you but put La Traviata in the John Sutherland Theatre. And I must tell you that I'm really an opera lover. I've seen that production a few times. It's beautiful. Because every few years they try to change the productions to so people can come and it's refreshed, different opera singer, different setting. But this was for La Traviata, I think that was the best. In the 90s, that was there. Now there is the drama theatre with about 550 seats. I mean, it's a Sydney Theatre Company have a theatre there. The Playhouse Theatre with just under 100 seats. It's quite more flexible seats. And the Studio Theatre also can sit up to 100 people. And believe me, each venue is very, very busy. Now, the Hudson Room, it's a small multi-purpose venue. They've got some performances, parties, corporate function, and it was designed by the architect himself, Hudson, in 2004. You'll hear all about him, and you'll be amazed that he even agreed to design a room. It was all for his honor, with beautiful harbor views. It's the other side of the bridge, so you look at the other side of Sydney Harbour. And this is, you can see me here, this is in the Hudson Room. I officiated the wedding there last year. It was a magnificent wedding in the Hudson. This is my couple, and then we all went out to take photos outside, so you can see on the left. So I've done quite a few weddings in the Hudson Room. And the outdoor forecourt, this is the wedding party. I took a photo. It's an open-air venue, wide range of configuration options. So they use it a lot. Also the outdoor of the Sydney Opera House. Very easy to go up and down those steps. But if you've got walking difficulties, you can take a lift or escalator to go to the upper level. Or I'm talking about on the outside, right? So you've got recording studios, retail shops, cafes, restaurants, and you've got the opera bar and guided tours, including a frequent tour. I mean so the guided tour, I always tell people, try to book it in advance. They're very, very popular. Now, the location is Bennelong Point. You can see where Bennelong Point, that in front there is Circular Quay. It's really prominent spot on the southern side of the Sydney Harbour, just east of the very close to the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and inside the harbour. And as I said, I live about 10 miles north of the Sydney Opera House. So every time I go to the city, I have to cross the harbour bridge or our tunnel. And when the harbour bridge is, I see the Sydney Opera House. So Bennelong Point originally was a ceremonial and a very important gathering place for the Gadigal people. These are the indigenous people of the area. In the First Nation, and it was for feasting, singing, dancing, and storytelling for many, many generations, thousands of years before the Europeans arrived. So when the British arrived in 1788, they used Bennelong Point, that point, to keep their cattle and horses. It was so central they could keep there, and guess what? They call it Cattle Point. And it was really, I mean, the horses had fantastic harbour views there. Now, a few years later, the point was named after Bennelong. Bennelong was the first indigenous person to learn English and to act as liaison between the British and the locals. And by the way, his wife was Barangaroo. And there is the other side, I mean, of the very almost walking distance. It's a new area built only the last 10 years. It's a new casino there is Barangaroo. She was his wife. So we've got, this is fantastic that we named a very prominent spots in Sydney after the indigenous people that Bennelong and Barangaroo. Now, in 1790, Governor Arthur Phillip built a brick hut for Bennelong in what became known as Bennelong Point. That's where he had a brick hut for him, and that's why the name then was changed to Bennelong Point. So in 1821, Fort Macquarie was built there on this point, and this is a picture from 1870. That's how it looked. Now, it was demolished in 1902, and guess what it was replaced with? With a tram shed. So this is what it looked like also, terrible. And after the Second World War, there were many calls to build performing arts center in Sydney. Sydney didn't have any decent venue for performing arts, and it was really growing. I mentioned in my previous talks that Australia had a boost of migration after the Second World War from Europe between 45 and 65, and the country was full of optimism, and it was looking to define identity. Now, this gentleman, his name is Eugene Gossens, is almost forgotten, but he was an English director and composer, and he pushed for a new venue for Sydney because he arrived in 1946 to lead the symphony orchestra, and he was instrumental in the idea of building an opera house. Unfortunately, I mean, he spoke to many politicians, many people. He planted the seed of an opera house, and he left Australia in 1956 due to some scandal. So he never actually been in Australia later on. But another key advocate that we really have to thank for was Joseph Kyle. He was a railway worker who entered politics and became New South Wales Premier in 1952. And we really have to thank him and for his vision and his persistence to build an opera house. And he shared the idea that it must be an opera house, that he believed that all people, regardless of their class or background, had the right to enjoy fine music. And his vision was crucial to making the opera house a reality. Wasn't so simple. Not so many people believed in it because they thought we can channel resources to more important things, build a new road, for example. So in 1955, the Opera House Design Competition was announced by Premier Joseph Kyle, and Bennelong Point was declared the site for the proposed new opera house. So the competition guidance was 25. That's how it looked in the pamphlet. They called it the Brown Book. It included black and white photos of Bennelong Point, and the competition entered by paying a fee of 10 Australian pounds. You can, if you're an architect or just can you consider yourself that you can do something, you can send your entry. And that was from the Brown Book. And 4 judges were appointed. One that I want to mention, his name was a brilliant man. You may have heard about him in the States because he was a Finnish born US architect. His name was Eero Saarinen. Eero Saarinen, it's a Finnish name, and he designed quite a few famous buildings in America, actually. And there was also a British-born architect, and so there were 4 architects that were the judges. And what I put here, these are other entries that were sent. You can see what was really popular in the late 50s, what sort of design. So in April 1956, Danish architect Jørn Utzon, he just celebrated his 38th birthday. He started working on his design for the Sydney Opera House in his modest office just in a suburb of Copenhagen. So he was working on it. And only 8 months later, in December 56, he sent his 12 drawings to Sydney just before the competition closed. Absolutely the last minute. That was one of his drawings. Now, Utzon, who was he? He was a former sailor. His father was a naval architect. He was inspired by the shape of sails for his design, and he looked at Bennelong Point, where the building would stand, and he saw it as really prominent landmark. And he noted similarities to Kronborg Castle in Denmark, which is also on a notable peninsula that you can see it from so many places. And for his proposal, he drew inspiration, and this is quite amazing, if I'll tell you, from Mexican ruins, like Monte Alban and the Mayan pyramids at Chichen Itza. I don't know if you've seen the Mayan pyramids, because they had all those, they built on a platform with steps. That was his inspiration. Look at this platform, look at the steps. He included it in the opera house, isn't it? So the judging began in January, straight after it was closed, January 57, and it's not very clear what was the process. So Utzon's design was numbered 218, and it was one of the last entries out of 223 entries, and there were submissions from 28 countries worldwide. This is one of the drawings, and look at the similarity to what it is today. That was, it really resembles the steps. That's what his drawing was. And the judging committee actually chose his design as the winner. And his plan features the two main halls and on a large podium facing the harbor with sail-shaped concrete panels acting both as also roof and walls. And he put a cost, the estimated cost, $7 million. So look at that. He put these parabolic shells shaped like bananas almost, and connected with common axes. And it looks like it was floating above the sea. Now, the four judges, when they chose it, they said, we have returned again and again to the study of Utzon's drawings, and we are convinced that they present a concept of an opera house which is capable of becoming one of the great buildings of the world. Well, they were right in retrospect. Now, he won 5,000 pounds at the time. Now, I'm going to tell you a top secret. They actually chucked his design into the bin. And this Finnish US architect, Eero Seringham, actually got it out of the bin, took it from the garbage bin, and he said to them, gentlemen, gentlemen, look at that. Look at this concept. Why are you throwing it into the bin? Let's consider it. That is the secret. Can you imagine? So, yeah, you can imagine. So, in the 1950s, modernism was the dominant style. You have to think about it, rejecting decorative elements of pre-war architecture. Nobody sent any design that resembled, let's say, the Paris Opera House. I mean, that was not modern enough, of course. And focus was on function, and many buildings included resembles like glass boxes. That was another entry there. So they're all like glass boxes. And in contrast, Utzon's design was more sculptural and also embraced expressionism, totally different from all the others' entries. And it was the only entry, actually, that fully used Benelong Point's harborside location, allowing the building to be viewed from all angles. That was the only design that did it. Now, he was born in 1918 in Copenhagen, and as I said, his father was a naval architect, and he went to international exhibitions with his parents. They're really intellectuals, and they promoted him. And he studied art at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Art, and he started his career working with the leading Danish architects firms in Denmark before starting his own practice in 1951. And as I said, in 1957, his design won the competition, and it became actually his most famous project. Now, another secret that I'm going to tell you about the Sydney Opera House, that when choosing the winning proposal, the judges didn't know how to execute the project. You choose a design, you've got no idea how, if it's practical, how you're going to build it. Yes. So a few months later, Utzons presented a detailed plan with help from an unbelievable engineer. His name was Ove Arup, and another acoustic expert to help him. And the project was built into 3 stages, which makes sense. First, you do the base, then you do the roof, and then you finish with the interior. Makes sense. So now, while they do the base, they will focus on the foundation on the first level, so on the podium, while we work out how to do the roof. So on the 2nd of March 1959, construction of the Sydney Opera House began, and there was a crowd gathering there under umbrellas to watch the ceremony. And Utzon was next to the Premier Joseph Kyle, and he placed a bronze plaque, and building straight away began. So the Premier of New South Wales then, Joseph Kyle, and there is a Kyle Expressway named after him that passes around the Opera House today. Starting the opera project was a major milestone. He really pushed for it. He had this vision. And after 2 years of defending its cost, because if you've got opposition in your parliament, so whatever you say, they want to show that you're real opposition, so they challenge everything. So he defending the cost, and we are talking about 7 million then he went to defend. He believed it was important for Sydney and Australia's future. And he saw the Opera House as a monument for the people, unlike other grand monuments around the world that were built for religious purposes or for individuals. He says this is a building built by the people for the people. It's not a religious monument. It's not to glorify anyone. And that's why it's so special about the Sydney Opera House, because you go around the world, you're world travelers. Think about all the grand buildings, architecture you've been. You've been to many cathedrals and mosques and pyramids. So this is worldwide when you travel. So that was, he really had this incredible vision to think beyond the present for the future generations. And the engineers already faced the challenge in stage 1, because they discovered that Bennelong Point was not built on a rock. It was unstable, clay soil. And I just can't believe it, because most of Sydney is built on clay soil. When you build a house today, you have to make, because you'll have cracks in your buildings. It moves, the clay soil. So to fix it, of course they have to fix it. So 700 concrete poles were needed, and water had to be pumped out. So already that raised the cost significantly, you can imagine. So massive concrete foundations were used to stabilize the unstable rock on the side. And this unplanned work, because this is something you had to do that wasn't planned, it already went beyond the original $7 million. So they faced another problem. Can you imagine putting foundation and you don't know what is the weight of the roof? You don't have to be an architect to think about it, isn't it? They didn't know what it would weigh. So building a foundation, it was very, very challenging. How much do we have to support? So, but Premier Kyle was so eager to proceed without changing the plans. He wanted to ensure the project succeeded before facing any opposition. We do it. So he was 68 when the construction began, but 7 months later, he fell ill at a meeting at the Parliament House, and he sadly passed away the next day. Got a heart attack. And from his deathbed, he asked Norman Ryan, he was the Minister for Public Works, to ensure that the Opera House project would not fail. So by January 63, the podium, this is a picture from the time, was completed, marking the end of stage 1, it took 5 years after the construction began. So the originally, it was supposed to cost 7 million and finish in 5 years, right? So in 1961, Utzon proposed a design for stage 2, and The original one that he thought was a bit risky, because if one part collapses, everything will also collapse, the others will follow. So for 2 years, he tested various alternatives for the concrete roofs. We are going to build the roofs. They were still battling with the question. So the complex shape of the shells was challenged by, it was very challenging for engineers. Sometimes architects have wonderful ideas, but engineers come and say, you just can't do it. So in 1961, he solved this by changing the design to spherical sections, and he said the idea, and this is, everybody knows, the idea was inspired by peeling an orange. He thought about it, so the 14 shells you put together, it will make a perfect sphere. So that's what he did, and you can see in the top was 57, the bottom, that's the 61 design. And one major challenge was the complex shell shapes, and amazing innovation for the time was to using precast concrete sections shaped to match the curves of the shells. So you don't really do it on site, you produce those precast. And these sections were then lifted into place by cranes and fixed into the structure. So it was much quicker and more efficient. So it wasn't actually built there brick by brick. As I said, it was constructed like that, and you've got 10 shells that supported each other in 3 groups. Now, he believed the tiles were absolutely crucial to the building design. He never thought about that, believe me. I couldn't imagine a digital era when you can have all these shows on the building. That's amazing what we are doing. This is in vivid Sydney. Every year we have different designs, and it's in June every year. And he wanted the white structure to reflect the changing sky throughout the year. So he had this vision. So he didn't think about laser lights. That will be very good for that. So as I said, he wanted the tile to stand out against Sydney's sunny blue sky and the harbour. And he chose glossy tiles from Japan that were durable. As I said, he went around Japan looking, because they were really well known to making tiles, and he had slightly rough texture to avoid glare. So he even thought if it will be all smooth, it will be too glary. But from a distance, it looked uniform, isn't it? So the roof was covered with 2 types, and if you go close, you'll see it very easily. 2 types of mosaic tiles, glossy white and the matte beige. And the combination actually made the building shine without being too bright. So as I said, it was pre-made, pre-assembled into modules before being installed. And it looks, you look at it from a distance and near, it looks different. So as I said, more than 1 million tiles on that roof, plus they manufactured extra to replace tiles. It's amazing. They didn't have to replace so many tiles. And it's quite self-cleaning, although periodically they clean it. But the weight, the tiles design, and the shape, the rain come, washes it, it's self-clean. It's amazing. So what happened? In 1965, the coalition defeated the Labour Party, and the new premier was named Robert Askin, and the Minister for Public Works clashed with Utzon about lots of things, mainly costs, and refused to actually cover running expenses. And this was the premier then of New South Wales, that's the coalition. And in December 1965, he gave them a ceiling design. He had to give them a design, otherwise they wouldn't give him money. But his engineer, they never spoke to him again afterwards. His engineer said, it's not practical, it's not going to work, that design. So, I mean, since then, they never spoke to each other. So he says the plywood ceiling that Utzon designed for that will never work. That caused a rift, and that was the end of the relationship. So, in February 28, 1966, Utzon resigned from the Opera House project. He clashed with what he did. He closed his Sydney office. He promised never, ever to return to Australia. And let me tell you, he kept his promise. When that Utzon room was designed years later in 2004, he wasn't in Australia. He never came back. He left in 66. He never seen the Opera House. I mean, he was invited, didn't want to know. So this was a public rally of architects, was begging Utzon to return, begging the government, the state government, to reinstate him. And that Peter Hall, you can see on the left, he would eventually complete the project, was among these who signed the petition. Now, Utzon refused to return, as I say. He didn't want to see his vision completed by others. That was his excuse. And when he left, the shells were nearly finished, and the costs were already 22.9 million when he left. So another major changes to the interior. The final cost it brought it to 103 million. So I already told you what happened. Now, the Opera House lottery, because I mean the opposition was fighting, why should we finance an opera house, blah, blah, we have to build more infrastructure. So they found a solution. There was the Opera House lottery, started in November of 1957, and it ran until 1986. I actually bought some lottery tickets when I came in 77 because they needed the money to finance it. So they sold over 86 million lottery tickets, and they raised most of the money for the Sydney Opera House. They had big prizes. And there was also, I haven't got time to tell you, it was a tragedy that somebody won £100,000. His son was kidnapped for ransom and actually was killed. So that was really tragedy with that. But it changed the lottery laws in Australia that if you win a lottery, your name is not published unless you want it. So that's how the tickets look like. And it was officially opened in 73. And Utzon was really respected and honored. This is, he redesigned the reception hall, as I said, and his son, Jan, created that 14-meter tapestry for it in that room. As I said, I showed you the room already. Now, what happened to Utzon? He died in Copenhagen in 2008. He was 90. He died of a heart attack. As I said, never ever came to Australia. He was he's still respected, and he was also awarded with the Order of Australia. We really understand and appreciate his contribution. So who completed the job? In March 1966, the government asked Peter Hall to complete stage 3 of the Sydney Opera House. And he actually supported Utzon's return. And Utzon refused to return. And they told Peter Hall, if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. So Peter Hall took upon this project. And he did a most amazing job. He was appointed in March 66 to complete the project with another architect, and we really have to thank both of them. The other one was addressing the acoustic, seating, and structure. There was so much involved in that. So you can see this is already in 67. Another that was a start of stage 3. They had to complete in January 67. And stage 3 was very challenging for the architects and for the engineers. They had to design all these glass walls that you see inside, and they had to solve lots of problems. And they wanted to ensure that Utzon's vision of seeing the harbor from all the foyers was realized. So it was quite challenging putting all this glass around. We are talking about 6,000 square meters of glass around the Sydney Opera House. And they ordered from France. And you've got 650 kilometers of cabling there for electricity, electronics throughout. So in 66, he submitted a new plan, which was amazing, with 2 separate halls. He believed that a single hall could not serve both concert and opera well. And thanks to his vision, we can now host both types of events simultaneously. So the opera will start, let's say, at 7:30, and the concerts will start at 8, so people don't arrive at the same time into that car park. So it was a significant achievement for Peter Halsey. He went around the world looking at designs, and he put his heart and soul and everything. So we have to thank Peter Hall also. He died of a stroke at the age of 64 in 95. His family said that this project consumed him. So this is, it's interesting. You see Jan Utzons, that Johan Utzon's son, and Willie Hall, Peter's son, inside the Sydney Opera House. And you can see they had lots in common, the children. So there were lots of innovations that I don't have time to tell you about the Sydney Opera House, because we're already running out of time. So this is June 1973, stage 3 was finished at the cost of 80 million. So the total cost, I already told you, 103, took 14 years to complete. This is the day of the opening. If you lived in Sydney in 1973, you'll never forget the day. In October 20th, Queen Elizabeth officially opened the Sydney Opera House. And it was a huge celebration. Again, I can't, but what I would like you to look what the Queen said at the time. The human spirit must sometimes take wings or sails and create something that is not just utilitarian or commonplace. So this is the celebrations, the harbor. Anyone with the dinghy went into the harbor to celebrate. Now, if you want to take a photo, if you're interested, this is the stages, how it was built. This is, I've got another page, so if you want to take a photo. And this is how it was completed. So it will remind you what I was talking about. So I didn't tell you when we came to Australia from South Africa in 1977, we used to go to the operas, but there was no parking. There was a shuttle bus from a park up the road, from a big parking area. So it was why there was no parking? Because the botanical gardens are right behind the Sydney Opera House, and they were worried that we build a car park, it will affect the trees, and they will ruin the botanical garden. So this is one of the deepest car parks in the world, with 12 stories and well over 1,000 spaces, 42 meters underground. And it's designed, look at the design, it's a double helix with a shape like a shape of a donut. And it's 7 meters below the surface starting. So it won't interfere with the roots of the trees in the botanic gardens. So this was only completed in 1992. A lot of people take for granted that we have parking. So each year, there are over 3,000 events there. It's constantly used. And it's actually, you ask who manages. There is an Opera House Trust with 10 members that are appointed by the New South Wales government. They get 3 years terms and they maintain it for the government to make sure everything is above board. And it went through several renovations since it was built. In 1990s, in the 2000s, it's also more renovations to bring it up to date. But the major renovation was during COVID. And you know what they spent on the last renovation? 300 millions. Just to give you an idea. And that is to prepare it for its 50th anniversary. So they upgraded the technology, the machinery, the public access, and they upgraded a lot of things in the Opera House. After 50 years, they had to do it. And they say that more than 10 million people walked through the Opera House with the 7 venues there. And more than 1,000 rooms have been to the backstage. The backstage is another world there. If you have a tour of the Opera House, they'll take you to the backstage. It's amazing. So this is Vivid, Sydney, annual 3-week festival of light, music, ideas. And you come there, also on the buildings, but mainly on the Opera House. Every year you've got different designs. It's amazing. When I said to you, it's amazing. This is Vivid Sydney, to open to imagination, whatever you can see there. We come there and we take endless photos. And this is, for example, Chinese New Year. So we celebrated the 50th anniversary in October 2023. And the buildings actually paid for itself hundreds of times over. With tourism and art that it brings to Australia, if you can imagine. So it seems as one of the best investment of public money for future generations, that kind of building. So as Utzon's colleague said, Utzon made a building well ahead of its time, far ahead of available technology, and it preserved through extraordinary malicious publicity and negative criticism to build a building that changed the image of an entire country. So it is a World Heritage masterpiece, celebrated for human creativity. So it is just more than provide space for art. It is a work of art, the building itself. So Australia is very grateful for the vision and daring of previous generations. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my opportunity to say thank you so much to all of you for your incredible feedback, for your warmth, and for your company. And I wish you all bon voyage and enjoy Australia.